everyone. My name is Adriana Loson-Ceballos, and I'm based out of San Diego, California. I am also the co-founder of the Latino Community Foundation's San Diego Giving Circle. The Latino Community Foundation hosts a network of Latinx giving circles across the state of California.
Adriana, it's wonderful to see you. I'm Andrea Pactor, and until recently, I was the Associate Director of the Women's Philanthropy Institute, which is housed at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, but I retired in April.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I not similarly, but similarly in the sense that I'm also in academia, is that I'm pursuing my PhD in leadership studies, and my focus has been on researching Latinx giving in the United States in general, but Latinx giving circles in particular. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Well, and we're excited to hear a little bit about what you're learning from your research. But it certainly makes sense that the two of us are doing this together. Not only do both of our names start with the letter A, but we have this keen interest in studying philanthropy and thinking more broadly about the role of individual giving circles in growing philanthropy generally. So let's get started. I'm very, very excited.
Great. And like you said, one of the things that we are really passionate about is expanding who we call a philanthropist, right? So if you're on this, if you're looking at this conversation, congratulations, you're a philanthropist. So we're very excited to share some of the tips that we've learned through our work and our research, particularly today on how to evaluate and measure the impact of your giving and what it contributes towards. So yeah, we're excited that you're starting a giving circle. But we also think it's important to start with some definitions. Sorry, Andrea, I interrupted you.
Well, absolutely it is, Adriana. And also, you know, the evaluation and measuring impact are not necessarily the sexiest or the jazziest of topics. They're really important to think about, though, at the beginning, so that when you get to that part of the process, you have a plan, you have a vision, and you've been collecting the data all along that's going to enable you to be effective in these two particular areas. So what is evaluation is a lot of things, but for the purposes of this conversation, think of it as an opportunity to assess the impact of a program or a grant. It's often part of this ongoing process that enables us to determine whether our goals are met. But it also can be used, and this is really important, to evaluate or to measure the health of your giving circle and the satisfaction of your members. So Adriana, how would you think about measuring impact?
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you talk about, you know, measuring impact on your members, because there's definitely been a lot of research on that front, and that's specifically where my research is focusing on. And so I focus on two types of levels of benefits. One would be intrinsic benefits, or what you feel at the personal level. So an example would be like a sense of community or a sense of belonging. It's something you're going to feel, and that your members at your giving circle are going to feel, and you're going to want to be able to capture that as well. But also thinking about, like, what extrinsic benefits do you have? Like, do you have access to a new networking opportunity to learn more about how to give, or did you increase your financial literacy on something? And so those are the types of benefits that also are important, and that come because you're part of this group and you belong. So it's important to measure both sides of the impact on the members.
And I think for a lot of people thinking about this process, measuring the impact of the grant making may take higher priority. But as you've said, it's really valuable to assess how the members are feeling about all of this. So whether the giving circle comes together from friends or colleagues or people who respond to a general invitation, it really is helpful to step back from time to time and reflect on the work together on the giving circle members. So how would you do this? I thought of 3 ways, and you might be able to suggest a couple of more. Number 1 would be an informal survey at a meeting. Number 2 would be a more formal survey that would be sent electronically to the members, maybe using SurveyMonkey or some other platform like that. And then it can be answered anonymously. And the other possibility I thought of was a simple request for feedback via email, if anybody still uses email. And when you're ready for this step in the process, it might be helpful to review some of the research about the impact of giving circles on members. And of course, your dissertation isn't quite done yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but we're working on it. But the Women's Philanthropy Institute does have one study that looks at Giving Circle membership, how collective giving impacts donors. And that's available on the Women's Philanthropy Institute website in the Complete Research Library under that title of Giving Circle membership, how collective giving impacts donors. So we're both have lived in this academic world, and sometimes it's possible that in the grant making process, we get very focused and we get very serious, that maybe we forget to have fun.
Yes.
Although I think you always have fun. What we do know from the research, and I think you're probably finding this in yours, is that members really value the social and the interactive aspects of the giving circles, in addition to the benefit of networking that you talked a little bit about earlier. So when you evaluate the impact of the experience on members, be sure to ask if people are having fun, and ask for suggestions about how to keep fun at the center of the work. Ask for suggestions about building community within the giving circle, particularly if they're people who didn't know each other coming in. It's a lot like, I think, a book club, where it's much easier to build that community if they're your friends, and much harder to do it if they're people who come from outside of your network, right? And so as you embark on this grand adventure, you can design the community to meet the interests and needs of the people that you're engaging.
I love that.
Yeah. So what do you think? What's next?
Yeah, and you know what I like about that is that it made me think of, like, I had a supervisor who used to say fundraising should have fun in it. And so I always felt like, what does that mean? But right now that you said that, that's so true, because I do find that a lot in my research. And, you know, going back to your earlier comment on how, because we tend to be in this world so much in academia, we almost sort of have lost, you know, like it's easier for us to like take a step back ourselves and think about what are good things that we should be promoting when it comes to measuring and evaluating your grant making. And so one of the things that I wanted to share was a story that when I had started off in my fundraising career over a decade ago, I got a donor who asked me how their gift of $2,500 was going to change the world. And I didn't know how to respond, because I didn't know that their $2,500 could change the world. So we definitely want you to sort of to have a conversation as a group and with your organization to tip number one, manage your expectations. And I think that it's important to say that it's not to trivialize the size of the gift or to trivialize the giving itself, but to say, let's have a conversation on what we think this money is going to do and what we want to see this money going towards ahead of time. Because as Andrea said, you have to start early so that by the time that you're evaluating the right things. So that would be my first tip, would be to manage your expectations before you even give the money, so that when you're measuring the impact, you know what you're measuring. And on that note, and I think it's sort of, it goes back to what I did with that donor, was that I returned an annual report. Because giving together means that we get to celebrate together. And so a lot of the organizations that you fund aren't necessarily going to have the capacity to be able to tell you what that $1,000 was spent on, but you contributed to the success of that organization or that program by donating to their annual fund. And so being able to celebrate together with other people in your community that also funded this organization is a good way to get the information that you may need in terms of evaluating what the impact of your contribution was able to make. Which leads me to my third tip, which is lighten the load. I'm in the nonprofit space. Andrea, you were in the nonprofit space. We know that, it's always, we're always strapped for cash and limited bandwidth. But when we are asked to sort of do these one-off reports, like that does distract from, you know, potentially doing other work, particularly when you're a smaller organization. So however we can free up the organizations to do what we want them to be doing in our community is something that I think would be important. So when you think about how you're measuring the giving, ask them if they've already come up with a report. Ask the organizations if, you know, maybe they have an update that they shared with their board already, or maybe they are sending out a regular newsletter to some of their, you know, like biggest supporters on what they've been able to achieve. You know, don't make them necessarily, you know, come up with something new. They're the ones that are measuring their work. And so it's helpful to sort of listen to them and follow their lead as well. And I wanted to close with a quote that has been attributed to Albert Einstein, but in our search, it's been attributed to a lot of people. So who's to say who it ultimately is attributed to, but it's a very good quote for what we're talking about. So it says, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And so also be able to be receptive to those stories about individual impact. That story about that kid who stayed in the after school program and was able to do X, Y, and Z. You know, like sometimes we're like, we want to feed 100 children, and that's a great metric, but, you know, be open to other metrics that might make more sense to whatever it is that you are choosing to support. And that is where leaning into your community and also the organization will be really helpful in making sure that you're capturing what the impact is of your giving.
Adriana, it makes me think that, you know, this isn't necessarily easy work, but it will be worth it, right? And
Right.
you've had a great time with your giving circle.
That's
right?
correct.
And so much
Yes.
so that you decided to do an entire dissertation on it.
I
So
mean,
in sum, just to think through just some action steps for the people who are listening or watching this is how important it is to think through the entire process from the beginning so that you're not surprised at the end if somebody says, well, how did you measure your impact? And again, that idea about lightening the load is also about finding the right people to help in this process. So
right.
Among the members, there are people with lots of talents. So let's use their time and their talent as well as their treasure to make this the best possible experience for everybody involved. The last idea, I think, really is that it can and should be fun.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So it doesn't always have to be really structured or formal. Lots of giving circles are very flexible and loose and fluid. But like all projects, it really does, what's that message the carpenters do? Measure twice and cut once. Do you know that?
I don't know though, but that is really cool.
So it requires thinking and planning ahead so that you have what you need when the moment arises.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being in conversation with me today. I really appreciated this.
This was a lot of fun. I hope everybody enjoys it.
Congratulations, everyone. All right. Bye.